The import of U.S. lobsters with stiffer tariffs. And Contessa Brewer joins us now from Maine with that story. All right, we got to settle this thing, Contessa, I think.
That had invested and expanded and ramped up to supply beautiful Maine lobster to a newly ravenous Chinese market. And then the trade war erupted. 25% tariffs were slapped on American lobster.
Maine's shockwave. The story begins on the coast of Maine, where lobster boats and processing plants once bustled with shipments to China. Not long ago, Chinese buyers were paying premium prices for Maine lobster, drawn by its reputation for freshness and safety. But that market collapsed overnight. In 2018, Beijing hit U.S. lobsters with a 25% tariff, later raising it to 35%. Orders dried up, and sales for Maine companies plunged by nearly half. For local workers, the trade war wasn't a distant headline. It was a hit to their paychecks, and at the center of this storm is President Donald Trump. His tariff strategy, designed to force concessions from China, ended up giving Canada an opening to seize America's market. Trump's America First vision. Trump has always framed tariffs as a way to protect American jobs and punish unfair trade practices. The idea, if imports become more expensive, countries like China will back down and American producers will thrive. But lobsters show the other side of that story. Instead of leveling the playing field, tariffs invited retaliation. And when China struck back, U.S. lobstermen, the very people Trump promised to defend, were the ones left stranded. China's precision strike. China's response wasn't random. By targeting lobsters, Beijing picked a product tied to Maine, a politically symbolic state. It was a reminder that tariffs can cut both ways and that Beijing could hit where it hurts most. Almost immediately, Chinese buyers turned to a new supplier, Canada. Canada steps. In for Canada, this was a golden opportunity. Exports to China jumped 40% in just 6 months. Ottawa and Canadian businesses moved quickly, expanding processing facilities, arranging charter flights straight to Chinese cities, and leaning on trade agreements that the U.S. lacked. Prime Minister Mark Carney presented it as part of a bigger strategy. Canada positioning itself as a reliable, long-term partner for China and Europe alike. Trump's tariffs, in effect, gave Canada a once-in-a-generation chance to rewrite the seafood trade map. The labeling question. The twist? U.S. lobster shipments to Canada surged by more than 130%. That raised suspicions. Were Maine lobsters being rerouted through Canada, relabeled as Canadian, and sold to China anyway? There's no hard proof, but the suspicion points to a larger truth. Tariffs don't stop trade, they just change its path. And in this case, the path shifted wealth and leverage from the U.S. to its neighbor. Backlash at home. Meanwhile in Maine, the fallout is real. Fishermen face idle boats, warehouses run below capacity, and small businesses can't survive a 50% drop in sales. Families that once counted on steady export orders are caught in the middle of a political showdown. The irony is sharp. Trump argued tariffs would protect these workers. Instead, many feel abandoned, pawns in a trade war they never asked for. From America First to America Alone? The lobster story is a microcosm of a bigger problem. Tariffs may be quick to announce, but their consequences ripple far and wide. Once China invests in Canadian supply chains, it may never return fully to the U.S., even if tariffs are lifted. Canada grows stronger. China diversifies its suppliers, and America risks being pushed to the sidelines. What was meant to be America First now looks dangerously close to America Alone.
Compared to the first half of 2018 before the tariffs came into play. And where are all those lobster coming from? Well, here's the puzzle. The U.S. is selling 130% more lobster and knowing the source that the Chinese are willing to pay a premium for. And that's one reason why these Chinese markets are so important for the exporters. And by the way, they're pointing out, hey, when we export lobsters to China, we are repairing the
Beyond lobster. The lobster crisis in Maine is just the beginning. It shows how Trump's tariffs ripple far beyond seafood, reshaping alliances and shifting trade power. What started as a fight between Washington and Beijing has now pulled in Canada, Europe, and entire global supply chains. Trump is still at the center. His tariffs are meant to project strength. But the real outcome may be that others, from Carney's Canada to China, are rewriting the rules while America gets left behind. Canada's long-game Prime Minister Mark Carney has turned the lobster war into a long-term strategy. His government invested heavily in export hubs, expanded cold storage facilities, and arranged direct charter flights from Halifax to Chinese cities. And it wasn't just Asia. Thanks to Canada's free trade agreement with Europe, Canadian lobsters now reach European supermarkets tariff-free, something American lobsters cannot match. Carney's message is simple. Canada is dependable, the U.S. under Trump is unpredictable. That narrative helps Ottawa secure markets the U.S. once dominated. China diversifies. For Beijing, lobsters were only one move in a larger plan. China does not want to rely on any single country for food or resources. Trump's tariffs only sped up that process. By shifting to Canada, China built new supply lines through Canadian ports and airports. Once established, those systems don't disappear. Even if U.S. tariffs are lifted, many Chinese buyers may prefer to stick with Canada. This shows the deeper risk. When America uses tariffs as weapons, others respond by building ways to trade without America at all. Rhetoric versus reality. At rallies, Trump calls tariffs patriotic. He points to billions collected in tariff revenue and claims it proves America is winning. But in practice, the cost falls on U.S. producers and consumers. Lobstermen in Maine know this firsthand. They lost customers abroad while Canadian competitors thrived. What looks like victory in Trump's speeches feels very different on the docks of New England. Canada's new advantage. By 2025, Canada's lobster industry had transformed into a global powerhouse. Exports to China alone reached hundreds of millions of dollars. The new facilities and trade routes built during the tariff war now give Canada a permanent edge. The lesson is clear. When the U.S. steps back, others step in. Carney turned a crisis into an opening, while Trump's strategy left American fishermen struggling. The escalation. Risk Trump hasn't stopped with seafood. He has used tariffs on cars, pharmaceuticals, and high-tech goods. His argument is always the same. America must defend itself from unfair competition. But the lobster example shows what happens next. China retaliates with precision, allies like Canada capture the market, and American workers are squeezed in the middle. Politically, this is risky. Farmers and fishermen are not just statistics. They are voters. If they feel abandoned, Trump's strongest supporters may begin to doubt whether tariffs really work. From America first to America alone. The larger danger is isolation. Canada now enjoys special trade access to both Europe and China. China has diversified away from U.S. suppliers. Europe keeps signing new deals with partners outside Washington. Tariffs grab headlines, but in the long run, they push others to trade without the U.S. What was meant to be America first increasingly looks like America alone. Lessons from the lobster war. The lobster fight offers 3 clear lessons. Tariffs often hurt domestic industries first. Once markets move on, they may not come back. Allies like Canada can turn U.S. unpredictability into their own advantage. It's not just about seafood. It's about how America's choices reshape the global trading system. Trump versus Carney. This is also a clash of leadership styles. Trump relies on confrontation, tariffs, and threats. Carney relies on adaptation, trade deals, logistics, and long-term partnerships. Trump's approach brings drama. Carney's brings durability. Over time, steady expansion may prove stronger than sudden tariff battles. The gamble backfires. Trump believed tariffs would force others to give in. Instead, China adjusted, Canada thrived, and Maine's fishermen paid the price. The bigger story is that tariffs can't control global trade. They may create headlines, but they also encourage rivals and allies to build a world that works without America. Trump promised America first. But the lobster war shows how easily it can turn into America alone.